Well, joining me now is former Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger. Michael, thanks for joining
James.
me. Brad Battin is the new leader of the Victorian Liberal Party. You happy about this decision?
Look, very happy. I think most people are in the Liberal Party in the community. Battin is for the working middle class. He's an ex-policeman, as we know. He's a community person, married family, kids, goes to all the local footy games, blah, blah, blah. He's like a Chris Minns, he's a Christopher Foley, he's no airs and graces, no celebrity, just head down, bum up. If you want someone who's going to work for you, crime, law and order, and Battin's your man, and he's not afraid, right? He understands the economics, he's not afraid, okay? So Battin is the right person at this time. Obviously very disappointing for John, but Brad Battin I've known for a long time. He's a very good person, Battin, a very good person.
You mentioned that he's a former police officer. He's also a former small business owner. So he's got experience clearly in areas where none of the Labor MPs seem to have any expertise. And of course, they're the two obvious issues in Victoria. Crime and businesses suffering badly. Do you think that he can finally get the Liberal Party to focus on the key issues? Because it's been a couple of years of distraction that, frankly, I wonder sometimes if the public are interested. The Victorian Liberal Party have made themselves a little bit irrelevant through all of this mucking around with Moira Deeming and the associated issues. Can he get the party back on track?
I think so. You've got to take the attack to the opposition. This is what Brad will do. I mean, look at Dutton. All right, Dutton's done a number of big things since he's become leader. He's taken on the immigration issue. He's stood firm with the Jewish community in Israel. Nuclear, right? He stands firm on law and order and these big issues. On budget repair. I mean, Dutton's not afraid. We are in a crisis now in this country. Certainly in Victoria, there's an economic and law and order crisis. Battin, and the other thing you've got to remember about Victoria, in 18 and 22, when Matthew Guy was leader, he lost those two elections mainly because this fellow, Daniel Andrews, spent $100 billion of the public's money. Remember, he famously said, you can have a rail line and you can have hospitals, you can have it all. He spent $100 billion. He's left Victoria bankrupt. Then he wandered off and he's left this Jacinda Allen in charge. I mean, I can win an election if I spend $50 billion, mate. And that's what he did. He bought those elections and it's an absolute disgrace what he did.
As bad as the Labor Party are in Victoria, how much responsibility does the Liberal Party in this state bear for the shocking state of things with their lack of focus, their constant leadership bickering? I mean, it's not all Labor's fault.
No.
You've got to have an effective opposition.
You do.
And for long-suffering Victorians, I've got to say, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And I think, to be fair, the 43% primary vote we've got is a lot more to do with Labor's ineptitude than our positive plan. And so I'm hoping that Brad Battin will announce over the next year some big policy ideas. I mean, that's what the electorate wants, right? That's what Dutton's done, this whole thing on nuclear. I mean, you've got to have courage. As you say, you've got to run towards the fire. You've got to give people you've got to inspire your base. You've got to inspire the electorate. You've got to stand for something. Dutton came out earlier and said he was against the voice, right? That defined Dutton as a person who was on the side of the majority of Australians at the end. Of course, at that stage, only 40% were against the voice. Then it flipped. You've got to stand for something. Why does Trump get elected? Because he stands for something.
Well, just on that, many of these Victorian Liberals were hoping that Jess Wilson would become at least the deputy. She was, I think, the only Liberal MP who voted in favour of the voice. How much of a disaster would that have been if they'd put her in the leadership group when Victorians are looking for a strong Conservative party? Did they dodge a bullet by not putting her as deputy?
No, I'm not going to comment on that because that decision's been made, but I know Jess Wilson very well. I've known her for most of my life, and I know her father very well. When he was a Member of Parliament, they're a great family, the Wilson family. Jess Wilson's an outstanding young woman, and she's going to make an incredible contribution in the state parliament in the years ahead. She's only been there a couple of years. So perhaps that might have been the reason that the members thought Brad Battin's been there 14 years, that, he'd done the hard yards and it was time for Battin to get the leadership. And I'm very glad for Brad that he has got the leadership. I mean, he's been there through thick and thin and kept his head high.
As we've seen, it's one thing to get the leadership of the Victorian Liberal Party. It's another thing to keep the leadership of the Victorian Liberal Party. Can Brad do that, bearing in mind Sam Groth, his deputy, has got unabashed leadership ambitions? Jess Wilson obviously wants to be part of the leadership team. And the coalition that Battin has formed seems a little uneasy. I mean, even today you had 4 MPs who voted against allowing Moira Deeming back into the party room, which I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
How easy will it be for Brad Battin to keep this team united, if indeed they are united even now?
I don't think he's going to have any trouble, and I'll tell you why. The Federal Parliamentary Liberal Party learnt from that whole period of Tony to Malcolm to Scott. No more. And I think the State Parliamentary Party have been through such an awfully difficult period, terrible period. I don't think any of them want to go through any more of this. I mean, Battin is very reliable, he's very dependable, he's very solid. People will fall in behind him in the same way they fell in behind Dutton. I mean, don't forget, you know, Dutton had run for leadership before and lost, as Brad had. You never know what people are going to be like till they get there in politics, right? They can go in with a great CV and end up being terrible, or they can go in, you know, and Dutton had been a great minister. But when he became leader of the opposition, as he has, everyone's fallen behind him. You don't hear a word of any leadership challenges or rumblings against Dutton. Why? Because he's performed. He's taken the fight to Labor, as you said. And secondly, because he's had the courage to you know, stand for something, and people don't want to go back to the days where people are brawling. So I think the Parliamentary Liberal Party in Victoria have had enough. They've decided on Brad and Sam, and I think that'll be the team. On the other hand, I am reasonably sure now, given what's happened today with us having changed, that they will dump Jacinta Allen. At some stage between now and the election, she's not going to be the leader. Brad Battin will be facing the deputy, Ben Carroll, who'll be the leader of the Labor Party. He'll be the Premier at the next election. I don't think Jacinta knows this. And I said Joe Biden didn't know it. I said he was going to be dumped.
Joe Biden didn't know much at all.
He didn't know much at all. But they're not going to keep Jacinta Allen. She looks and sounds like Daniel Andrews. She's bankrupted Victoria. She's the Marie Antoinette of basically Victorian politics. She's above it all. She's above ordinary people. She's got no idea the disaster she's left behind us. And she looks tired, ragged. They will dump her and put Carroll in, who's got more of the Chris Minns feel about him. So, you know, that's who Brad will be fighting. He'll be fighting Ben Carroll at the next election.